All right, so today we're going to jump into something that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to weight loss, and that is their gut health and their liver. So I think a lot of people don't know all the ins and outs of this part of their health. It's certainly not something that a regular medical doctor would be diving into with their patient as far as wellness and balancing things out in those areas. And so I think this is a really good topic to add into our whole conversation around healthy weight loss. And I'm excited for Julie to share a lot on this topic and us to dive in. So, if you haven't seen the last video where we talked about some of the foundations and myths around weight loss and things like that, that other video is in the previous email that we sent. We also have some saved links on our website as well to review. So,
Well, thank you.
Julie, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. I'm super excited to talk about this today because it's something that when I work with my clients, I hear a lot. They're often hesitant to dive into another, quote unquote weight loss program, or even if it's a weight rebuilding program, because they say, I've done it before. I'm really good at losing weight and I'm really good at gaining weight, but they have a really hard time maintaining weight. And it is true. There's a stat from the National Institute of Diabetes and digestive and kidney diseases that says approximately 95% of people who lose weight on a diet regain it again within 1 to 5 years. And yes, that is such a disheartening statement, especially if you feel like, yep, I'm one of those people, I fall into that bucket. And I think that if you kind of look at the other side of it, that it's taken us many, many years to figure out, but we can now see that just by focusing on diet alone, it's unsustainable. And by just focusing on diet, you're really missing that total health picture. You're not looking at the underlying metabolism, the gut, like we talked about, the hormones, like we talked about in our last video, of course, your liver function. And it can really make that lasting weight loss or overall health very, very challenging. But because we know if you only focus on quote unquote diet, and that becomes unsustainable, we now know where we have to put our focus. And that truly is on health rebuilding, which Rebekah and I are very passionate about. And that's what we're going to be diving into a little bit more today. So again, sit around a table with anybody and you will hear people say the things that they think affect their weight loss, right? I have to cut my calories. I have to run a ton. I have to fast. I have to go low carb. And it's all about willpower. I can only eat at home. It tends to be very restrictive. But again, what they're quite often missing is that the gut and liver health plays such a pivotal role in weight loss. And so that's what we are going to be really focusing on today. In our last video, we did talk about hormones, lifestyle, muscle, and those things are also equally important, but these are kind of bigger pieces and they demand a little more of our attention. So that's why we've pulled them out and we're focusing on them separately. But I want to make sure that everybody has an understanding of what the gut is. I think the word, people throw around, my gut has issues or I have gut issues. And a lot of people, if you ask them like, what is your gut? They have a hard time just defining it, right? So the gut is more than just your stomach. It is a truly complex system that includes everything from your mouth down to your colon. It's almost like a hollow tube that goes through your body. It's responsible for breaking down your food, helping you absorb nutrients, eliminating waste. But beyond digestion, the gut is truly the command center for many essential body functions. The gut, I'm not sure if you've heard, is often called the second brain because it does have its own nervous system and it actually produces more than 90% of the body's serotonin. And that's a hormone that affects your mood, as well as your digestion and your sleep. So you really want to make sure that you have that healthy gut. So inside your gut lives the microbiome. That's a really hot topic these days. And that's a group or a community of literally trillions of bacteria, fungi, and other microbes. And these teeny tiny organisms, they play such a huge role in your overall health, including weight management, which is why we really focus on it. The role of these microbes, again, they break down your food, they help you digest the food and extract the nutrients because your body needs those nutrients for energy and repair. So it's not enough to just eat clean or eat, a well-rounded diet, right? There used to be the saying, you are what you eat, but I like to say you are what you digest. And there's a big, big difference there. So the microbiome also helps us regulate metabolism. Some microbes actually signal the body to burn fat. while others can promote fat storage. So when these things are out of balance, you can see how it can be very difficult to maintain a healthy weight, as well as, have positive mood in, day to day. So the microbiome also helps us control inflammation. It really keeps that inflammation in check, and inflammation, like we talked about in the previous video, is linked to weight gain and having a really difficult time losing weight. Then lastly, when that microbiome is out of balance, it causes dysbiosis, and that is an imbalance between the number of good bacteria and the number of bad bacteria. And that can cause bloating, cravings, fatigue, and weight struggles. So I think when we kind of roll through all of that, you can really see why it's so crucial to focus on your gut health.
And when you were talking about the microbiome and all the impacts that it has, I just want to throw in that little study with mice where there was obese mice and lean mice, and they did a little bit of a swap with the microbiome in like a fecal transplant, and the lean mice got obese and the obese mice got
Yeah.
lean. That's
Isn't
the
that
power.
crazy?
And there was
Yeah.
no change in diet, no change in
Yeah.
activity.
Yeah.
That's the power of the microbiome on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's huge. Yeah. That's such a fascinating study to me. And I think I know this picture can look a little confusing, but I think it's kind of helpful to have a simplistic visual of what's going on in our gut. So if you look up here, this is where the food is coming through. If you eat something, it gets broken down into smaller particles and it's coming in. But in addition to food, there's also going to be bacteria, anything that you may breathe in. If you take antibiotics, pretty much anything you consume from your mouth that's going to go through your colon is passing through here. Then we have this, like there's a single cell layer right here on the gut lining. So if something like if you take antibiotics, if you get exposed to pesticides, herbicides, it can start to really break down this single cell lining that we have that's keeping the bad stuff that we consume or that accidentally gets on our food that we then consume that can get into our system. So this brush border and this single cell layer is so important, and it's only one cell deep. So it can become compromised relatively easily. And when it becomes compromised, that's when you get into this leaky gut situation. So the gut, this is what a healthy gut looks like. So the lining is a gatekeeper. So again, like we said, it's trying to keep the nutrients. We want to absorb nutrients while keeping these harmful substances out. But when it gets damaged due to things like stress or diet, toxins, medications, like we talked about, then it leads to, like the official term is intestinal permeability. Most people know it as leaky gut. So if you get into a situation, or if your gut gets into a situation where it looks more like this, it can make all the undigested food that you consume pass through your gut lining, and it can get into the bloodstream. It triggers inflammation. And then we get back to that same situation that we talked about before. Inflammation then disrupts your hormones like insulin, cortisol, and leptin. Leptin is the one that regulates your hunger and your fat storage. Your immune system goes into overdrive, can make you feel fatigued, and that will also promote more fat storage, and all of that leads to that slower metabolism. So it is so crucial to focus on what you're eating, your stress levels, and to make sure you protect your gut microbiome, because we really want to make sure that you keep these junctions tight and we limit the amount of pesticides, toxins, herbicides, everything, the environmental world, as well as foods that you might be sensitive to, because that's what's breaking down these tight junctions and can cause a lot of disruption in your microbiome.
Yeah, and on top of that layer that we're looking at right here is that mucosal barrier. So we have the GI lining, and then on top of that is this mucus barrier that is rich with immune cells and different nutrients to protect that lining. And a lot of the beneficial bacteria that we look for in gut testing is what helps keep that mucosal barrier healthy. And so when we see low levels of beneficial bacteria, we might then deduce that like your mucosal barrier is a little bit compromised, making your gut more likely to be damaged as well. So just another reason why those good microbiome bacteria is so helpful for us.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so if your microbiome, I really wanted to take even a further dive into the microbiome to specifically talk about how it might affect weight loss. So nutrient absorption, if the gut isn't functioning well, your body is going to struggle to absorb the nutrients that you need for fuel. So that's what I was saying. You're not what you eat, you are what you digest. And if you don't have those nutrients, your energy is going to be lower. So you're not going to have the energy to maybe go on a walk or to be more active during the day, or to have the building blocks for muscle if you are lifting in the gym. It really also affects hormone regulation. So the gut bacteria help produce hormones that signal fullness. I think everybody is very familiar with GLP-1s. They're all over social media, all over the news. And your gut bacteria helps produce the hormones that signal that the GLP-1, that fullness signal. So people are trying to replicate that with a shot. But if you have a healthy gut microbiome, it's going to naturally do that for you. It also helps craving control. So if you have that imbalanced microbiome, it's going to lead to cravings for sugar and processed foods, which feed the harmful bacteria. So the harmful bacteria are literally sending signals to your brain because these harmful bacteria, they like to eat the sugar and the processed food. So they literally there's a direct path, a gut-brain connection where they're sending signals to you saying, I want sugar because that's what they want to eat, which I think is just fascinating. It's kind of
Yes, and I have seen it. I've seen it where I'm going over a GI map and I
yeah,
see like elevated candida and they're like, "Oh my gosh, my sugar cravings are so bad." And I'm
yeah,
like, "Yeah, that
that's
makes
why.
sense because
Yeah,
candida loves sugar."
yeah. It's so
It's a vicious
creepy.
cycle.
It is a vicious cycle. And then lastly, just energy expenditure. So certain gut bacteria are linked to a higher resting metabolic rate, meaning you burn more calories even when you're resting. So again, I feel like we're saying it over and over again, but it's so important to have a healthy gut microbiome. And there are things you can do, right? So I'm sure you're thinking, how do I know what my gut, if I have a healthy gut microbiome? If you experience frequent bloating or gas, constipation and or diarrhea, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. Sometimes people say I'm constipated one day, then I have diarrhea. I want to take a quick second to say what being regular is. I've talked
Mhm.
to many women and they say, oh no, I'm not constipated. I go like every 2 days or every 3 days, or I go daily, and I'll ask them what it looks like. I know this is probably more than you want to hear. And they'll say, well, it's small, like pellets. It's hard, like marbles. And I'm like, oh, you're constipated. Like it shouldn't be hard. A healthy
Mhm.
body should be going at least 1 to 2 times a day. And this is probably more. I didn't even tell Rebekah I was going to say this. It's kind of graphic, but the amount you go should be from your elbow to your wrist in a day. It doesn't have to be, if you just go once a day and it's half that, the second time it should be at least the rest, not the width, but the length. That's about how much you should be, you should be eliminating in your day. Hey, if you work with us, we get really up close and personal with all your bodily
We've
functions.
heard it all. You can be
It's
open with
all
us,
good.
that's for
Yeah, it's
sure.
all good. Like Rebekah was saying, the cravings for sugar, even skin issues. I know sometimes people will say, like, I'm a 40-year-old woman. Why do I have acne? Or what's up with this eczema? And they'll think it's a topical, like they need to change their products or they need to put something on top. But skin issues are a reflection of what's going on in your gut. Brain fog is huge, difficulty concentrating, and just that general low energy or fatigue, not feeling like yourself. So you'll see there's a lot of overlap with perimenopausal symptoms. Um,
Yes.
so it can be confusing, right? What's
It's very
hormone?
confusing, like, "Oh, these symptoms match
Yeah,
me," but then they match this and this and
yes,
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
That's where
sometimes,
testing can be so
yeah,
helpful. Like, what
exactly.
really is the issue here?
Yeah. So we could, we always say test, don't guess. If you feel confused by your symptoms, the easiest thing is just to do a stool test. And we'll talk about that probably in another video. Okay, so the liver, we talked about the gut and now the liver. I know this is not an attractive picture. I could not find an attractive picture of a liver. Go figure, right? So I was actually surprised that in Canva, people must have searched for liver because there is a picture of a liver. But the liver is one of your body's largest and hardest working organs, but it doesn't get much love, right? It's not a really sexy organ to talk about. It's located on the right side of your abdomen, and it acts as a filter, a factory, and a storage unit for the body. It's actually like a cool fun fact that every minute it processes about 1.4 liters of blood. and it performs over 500 functions that are critical to health and metabolism. The liver, I think, is going to get its day in the spotlight. I feel like it's coming because it's a powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps with detoxification, right? Clearing out all the junk. Its primary job is to filter out toxins from your food, your medicines, alcohol, environmental toxins, chemicals. These toxins, if they don't get eliminated, can cause inflammation and therefore disrupt your metabolism. With their impact on weight loss, when the liver is overloaded with those toxins, it's going to store it in the fat cells to keep them away from your vital organs. And so that's why it can make fat loss more challenging. Your body wants to keep you alive. It's not trying to
Mm-hmm.
sabotage you. It's trying
Yeah.
to protect you. So as much as we may be annoyed with our liver, like, oh, I'm doing all the right things. Why am I gaining weight? But if you listen to your body's
Mm-hmm.
going to whisper and then it's going to scream, right? We really have to listen to when it's whispering to us because it's trying to tell us something. So that sluggish liver can slow down that detoxification, of course, cause that fatigue, hormonal imbalances, and again, slower metabolism. And fat metabolism.
Now, Julie, what does the liver have to do with hormones?
So the liver is our primary processor, right? So all of our hormones have to get processed through our liver. And if it's sluggish or if it's backed up, it's not able to bind the excess hormones and get them out of your body. And then they can just get recirculated throughout your body. That's oftentimes when people have estrogen dominance. It's not that they're producing too much estrogen. It's just that they're not detoxifying the estrogen.
Yeah,
And I feel
for
like for
sure.
that perimenopausal community, estrogen dominance is quite often talked about, and it can be a real issue, right? That's one of the things we do see a lot. And when we see estrogen high, we tend to like to look at the liver to see what's going on with the liver.
Yes, and it's also involved in the thyroid hormone conversion,
Yep.
T4 to T3.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
another key role of the many key roles that the
Yeah.
liver plays for
Yep.
sure.
Yeah. And then blood sugar management, also really important. The liver helps maintain steady blood sugar levels because it helps store glucose as glycogen. So when it's releasing it when the energy is needed, but if it's backed up, it's going to have a much harder time balancing, and you're going to get those spikes, and you're going to feel like garbage. And so your liver is
Mhm.
going to be working overtime to regulate it all, and that can lead to some insulin resistance, which is also a major barrier to fat loss.
And I will say, like, before we keep going, I wish I had added this graphic to the slides because it shows all the nutrients that are needed in phase 1 and phase 2
Mm,
detoxification of the
yeah.
liver. And I've seen so many more like conventionally minded people talking about kind of hating on detoxes, right? Like,
Yeah.
you don't need to detox. Your
Yeah.
liver is a detox organ. Your liver
Yeah.
detoxes you. And I just get so frustrated by that because it's almost like saying, okay, for instance, a statistic, pretty important one, is that 50% of American adults have fatty liver. So when you think about your liver as a filter for your body, if it's fatty and it's congested and it's sluggish, then half of us are walking around with
Right.
dirty filters.
Yeah.
So when they say like your liver filters it for you, how healthy is your filter? How clean is your
Right.
filter?
Right.
And sadly, half of us have fatty liver, which comes back to blood sugar, right? Like that's a huge factor.
Huge factor.
And so sugar is now I'm talking processed sugars and things really, really add to fatty liver. Then that throws off all of these things that we're talking about here. So yeah, I wanted to point that out. And then also like again, that all the nutrients that are needed for the liver to do its job. Maybe you don't have fatty liver, but maybe you're deficient in amino acids from protein because you're not digesting well. Or
Mhm.
maybe you're deficient in B vitamins because you're drinking alcohol regularly and it depletes your magnesium and B vitamins. And then your liver doesn't have the tools that it needs to do all the jobs. So, again, your liver might be trying to do all the things, but if we're not eating nutrient dense foods, which is what Julie hounds on, is eating
Mhm.
quality foods, not just calories in, calories out, what kind of nutrients are you getting so that your liver can do all this hard work?
Right. And then, like you mentioned, making sure that your gut is in a state where it can actually break down the nutrients and absorb the nutrients so that you
Correct.
have those
All
pieces
works
of liver.
hand
It
in
all
hand.
works together. Yeah. When
Yes.
you were talking about the liver and filtering and it doing its job, an analogy popped into my head with your furnace in your house, right? It's the
Yeah.
fall. twice a year we get the call from our furnace guy like, hey, time to like check your filter, right? So my furnace is perfect. But when he pulls out the filter and it's filthy, he's like, you need a new filter. So yes, you do need to make sure that the
Yep.
filter isn't junked up, because it might be in perfect working repair, but if it's full of gunk, it just can't do its job.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So similar to the gut, signs of a sluggish liver, fatigue, low energy, weight gain, sugar cravings, difficulty losing weight. Look, this looks like the same list as the gut, right? They are all
So
connected.
similar.
Yeah, and I did read that with the sluggish liver, particularly when you seem to kind of get that extra weight around your middle for quote unquote no reason, that can really be a sign of sluggish liver,
For sure.
because it's just trying to get the toxins away from your major organs again. Okay, so I love the education part, but I really think things come together when we look at it in practice with a client. So this was one of my clients in her late 30s. She was a state trooper and she worked a night shift. So she would work usually 3 to 4 nights and then have a few days off. So her schedule, her circadian rhythm schedule, was all kinds of a hot mess, to be technical about it.
Hmm.
According to her, her diet was on the go because she'd work so many late nights. She'd be eating at Sheetz or McDonald's or just out. She couldn't pack fresh foods because she'd be in her car a lot. She didn't have time to exercise. She was working full time and had 2 little kids. Her stress was very high. I mean, she was literally in harm's way whenever she was working. And then when she was home, she was taking care of 2 little kids. She had a very difficult time losing weight, and she wanted to make sure that she could also add some muscle to her frame, just given her job that she had. So we ran some gut and liver markers. And what we found with her was that her she had poor digestion and low stomach acid. So because of this, she had those weight struggles, bloating, digestive issues, and fatigue. It made perfect sense. We also saw that she had increased toxicity and sluggish liver, like we were just talking about. Again, that also correlated to her fatigue and her weight struggles. And then she also had increased oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is cellular damage. And it's not one cell or a couple cells, but it's every cell in your body is damaged. When your cells are damaged, they can't do their job. And that leads to inflammation and water weight. And really, one of the scariest markers for me when I look at my clients is that oxidative stress marker. That's a lifestyle marker. And there's so much that we need to address when clients have high amounts of oxidative stress going on in their system. So we also ran the stool test that we were talking about earlier, and you can kind of see what that looks like here. We saw that, again, her beneficial bacteria were very, very low. Because of that, she had difficulty concentrating, the fatigue, the weight struggles. And another interesting thing with what she was telling me is that she never felt satisfied. She would eat, and no matter what she ate, she just kind of felt like she wanted to keep eating. And she had that hard time burning fat. She also overall, like her big picture was just a depleted microbiome. Again, you'll see a lot of repetition here, and I'm saying it again because it's never just one thing. And it's really, really important to realize that we can't, pick one of these bacteria and say that there we go, we'll fix this one and you're healed. It's all of this together in working in communion or in harmony to promote total health. Then for her intestinal health markers, we could see that she had some severe damage from eating gluten. She did not know that she had a gluten sensitivity. She told me she never really noticed anything when she ate gluten, but her body, we could tell, that's this marker here, was
Pretty off the charts for her.
yeah, super off the charts. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, okay, step one, we've got to pull the gluten. And when you have really high sensitivity to gluten, it's going to cause that leaky gut and systemic inflammation. So that's super important that we address that. And then just
And
overall intestinal inflammation. Same thing, the abdominal pain, the diarrhea, bloating, fatigue. It was a kind of
yes.
a hot mess. I wouldn't tell you that if it was I did tell her. She had the personality where I could tell her labs were a hot mess. But it was a mess. So for her, we really had to focus on her nutrition. We had to increase the food variety and quality. We focused on pre and probiotic foods because we were really trying to work on her gut. I did have her remove gluten permanently. And then I asked her to remove inflammatory foods for at least 90 days so we could give her gut that break. And then we talked about what things she could live with and what things she couldn't live with. And it actually turns out she could live without a lot more than she thought she could in the beginning. But gluten was
Yes.
a permanent,
It's more, I feel like it's more of an adjustment period and
yeah,
a learning curve.
yeah,
And sometimes that deters people completely
yeah,
in them having the mindset that they can't let something go, but
yeah,
really they haven't thought through what they could have instead of those
right,
things.
right,
And so yeah, I actually completely agree.
yeah.
Once
And
you
I feel,
start the process, it gets
yeah.
easier.
Yeah, and once you, again, work with somebody who can help you, but like you said, you can find a substitute for anything. And really, when you think about like what are the deal breakers, there are so few deal breakers. And once you realize what you feel like when you don't eat that stuff versus when you do, it becomes so much of an easier decision to make that educated decision and say, like, I don't need it. I don't like the way I feel when I do consume alcohol or, whatever else it is that might be bothering your stomach. Um, for her, as you could see, we had a lot of the detox issues. So we really focused on her detox system. Stress management was really, really big for her, as it is for everybody. But like we said, she was a night shift worker. She worked 3 to 4 nights all night. So her circadian rhythm was off. And it wasn't even consistently off. She worked some nights, but then when she was home, had to take care of her kids quite often during the day. So I like to point that out because her situation wasn't perfect. She didn't have a total balance in her life. We weren't able to create a perfect protocol for her. With her, we had to do what we could. And even when she worked, we increased the food quality and variety. But when she worked, I couldn't have, the hottest soups for her or the freshest, fresh grilled chicken because she had to be in her car and she had to be able to eat quickly. And she couldn't even drink a ton of water on the days she worked because she couldn't, as she said, like it's dangerous to have to take off your gun belt when you're in a sheets bathroom, right? So these are just like the little things that we had to work on with her and make adjustments. So your life doesn't have to be perfect. If you ever find yourself saying, I can't get healthy because
Hmm.
that's just selling yourself short, right? We can always do something. Better is
Yeah,
better than nothing. It does not have to be perfect.
absolutely.
And then for her supplements, again, we really had to focus on her digestion, her liver, antioxidants. We worked on healing and sealing her mucosal barrier. And then once all that was done, we just reseeded her gut. And she was super happy with her progress. She lost about 20-ish pounds, felt better, felt more energized. And she wasn't done at this point. That's just kind of where I was able to grab a screenshot of where she was at that time. And so that brings us to like what's possible for you, right? We talked about it in our last video. If you have ever wondered what's going on in your system and you really want to be able to dive in and have more energy, be able to sleep better, feel like yourself, release some of that weight that you feel like came out of nowhere. We are super excited about our new program, which is called Nourish and Thrive, where we're focusing on weight loss through wellness. It is that a holistic root cause approach to radical wellness, really. We have the option to use functional labs or to not. We may not need to use them based on your health, but we really want to help you resolve hidden stressors so that you can achieve that optimal wellness. There are two programs that we are going to be running. One is called Thrive Your Way, and that it's a lot of accountability, one-on-one working with me as your coach. So we would have weekly accountability where we will be checking in every week to see what's going well, where do you need support, what kind of tweaks, what might we need to change when we look at your biofeedback. Is your digestion off? Is your sleep off? Is your hunger different? What's going on? What do we need to, flex up or flex down? We will be using macro-based nutrition so that we can really dial in not just your macronutrients, right? Your carbs, your proteins, your fat, but I also very much focusing on your micronutrients and really making sure that you have the building blocks you need for muscle, for cellular health, for intestinal health. And we also have a very detailed customized strength training program for you based on what your goals are, what equipment you have access to, what previous injuries you may have. Do you want to build your shoulders or your arms? Do you have access to all the equipment or just a little bit of equipment? We really want to make sure that we help you not just release weight, but to gain muscle in the process. Anybody can help you lose weight. We want to help you
Yep.
lose fat, gain muscle, and be healthier. I want to make sure you're healthier when you were done with us than when you started. Also, a ton of education, because not only do I want to be able to help you achieve these results, but I want you to be able to maintain them and be able to flex up or flex down your nutrition and really understand how you can be in the driver's seat and not just only have it only work when you're working with somebody.
Mhm.
But we realize not everybody needs that amount of support. So we also have the Thrive Together program. And this is a group program. So for some people who know what to do, but they just need a little bit of accountability, or they want to be in that group support program, they may want to be able to ask a question here or there. They know they'll do it if somebody tells them what to do. But they don't need, the weekly check-ins and the 100% customized protocol. This is really a good option. You do still have an access to message us questions when you have them, and you have access to hop on twice a month. We're going to have group calls where you can get some of your maybe more specific questions that you have about you answered. And it's also really nice for you to be able to learn in that group setting. So maybe somebody asks a question about, all of a sudden my sleep is off. What's going on? Maybe you don't have that problem yet, but you'll now know what that answer is, so that if that happens, you'll be able to use that. So the group
So
programs,
true.
yeah, is great for everybody, but really those people who are a little more they just need a roadmap, and they know they can execute if they have that. We have a ton more information on that program on the website. So take a look, check that out. And with either one of these programs, you do have the access to, or the option to run functional labs if you want to look at your gut or your liver or your blood markers, so that you really know where you're starting. And then once you're done, what improvements did you make on the inside of your health as well?
Oh, and
Anything I missed?
one
Yeah.
more thing about the 2 levels. If you start out and you're like, "You know what?
Yeah.
I really need a little bit more handholding. I'm gonna start with the Thrive Your Way to get more one-on-one support." You can transition to the group once you feel like you've reached a point where you're a little bit more confident in the process. And so we do have that flexibility, and vice versa. If you start out in the group and you realize, "Okay, I think I do need a little bit more one-on-one time," with some support, then you can upgrade to the Thrive Your Way. And the other thing is that it lost my mind. I don't know. I was going to say something and I lost it. So, but
If
that's
you don't,
really the
maybe
main
you were
point I
going to
wanted.
say, if you don't start with labs right away, you can always do them halfway
Yes.
through, at the end. You don't have to, if you don't have to do them always at the beginning. If you're like, hey, let me start and see how I feel. And then if we feel like, something, maybe it's working, but not working fast enough, or maybe, based on speaking with you, I'm like, let's see what your blood sugar is doing. We can add them at any time.
And I will say that for everyone, we're going to be doing an assessment in the beginning
Mhm.
with your intake. And so if you're sharing with us that you've had lifelong gut issues, or you're sharing
Yeah.
with us certain symptoms and things that we pick up on as practitioners that, you know what, blood chemistry or GI map or this or that would be really helpful to speed up your progress. If you have the ability to do that at the beginning to kind of really dive in, then we're more than happy to do that. And I
Yes.
will say also, if anyone's struggling with weight loss, typically there is some metabolic issues or nutrient deficiencies or different things like your thyroid that would be ideal to check in the beginning. So even though we're giving you the option to add it on at any point, I will say just in general, it is ideal if we can do some blood work in the beginning, and then at the same time we can do a retest at the end, like maybe 3 months in, check in on those blood markers and make sure that we're making the progress that we need to make in those areas. So either way, we're flexible. We want to support you in what you're ready to start with right now. But yeah, either way, we're ready to support with or without labs. And if we can do it in the beginning, that would be awesome. So
And if you have any questions, feel free to email Rebecca or myself, and we can talk with you about your specific questions, and we'll post our emails below the video.
awesome. All right.
Thank
Well, we'll
you.
see you guys next time.